A journey to solitude, Chloe Brennan gripped the steering wheel of her rented sedan as she navigated the winding mountain roads of Virginia's Blue Ridge region. The GPS had stopped working 20 minutes ago, leaving her with only a hand-drawn map from the rental agency and increasingly heavy rain. She was exhausted from the 8-hour drive from Boston, but relief flooded through her when the ornate iron gates of Riverside Manor finally appeared through the sheets of rain. The estate looked like something from a period drama. A sprawling stone mansion, with ivy crawling up its walls and towering oak trees forming a natural canopy over the circular driveway. Chloe had chosen this remote location specifically because the listing promised complete isolation. After a brutal breakup and months of creative burnout, she needed space to rediscover her passion for photography and heal her wounded heart. She parked near the front entrance and made a dash for the covered porch, her camera bag clutched protectively against her chest. The heavy wooden door was unlocked, just as the rental agency had promised. Stepping inside, Chloe found herself in a grand foyer with marble floors and a crystal chandelier that caught the dim afternoon light. Exploring the empty manor, the house felt frozen in time. Furnished with antiques and original artwork that spoke of old money and careful preservation, Chloe explored the first floor, finding a commercial kitchen, a formal dining room that could seat 20, and a sunroom filled with plants that somehow still looked healthy despite the house supposedly being vacant. She made her way upstairs, claiming the master bedroom with its 4-poster bed and windows overlooking the river. The room was pristine, the bed made with crisp white linens that smelled faintly of lavender. Something nagged at the back of her mind about how well-maintained everything looked, but she pushed the thought aside. Maybe the rental company employed excellent caretakers. After unpacking and changing into dry clothes, Chloe decided to explore more of the house. The storm had intensified, thunder rolling across the mountains like distant artillery. She found herself drawn to a set of double doors on the second floor, which opened into the most magnificent library she had ever seen. An expected discovery flirt, 2 ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, filled with leather-bound volumes that looked like they belonged in a museum. A massive stone fireplace dominated the 4th wall, and comfortable leather chairs were arranged around it. Rain lashed against the tall windows, creating a cozy atmosphere that made Chloe want to curl up with a book and forget the outside world existed. She was examining a first edition of The Great Gatsby when a voice behind her nearly made her drop the precious book. I have to admit this is a first. Most people who break into my home don't stop to appreciate the literature. Chloe spun around, her heart hammering. A man stood in the doorway, tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that was slightly too long and eyes the color of aged whiskey. He wore jeans and a cable-knit sweater, and despite his casual appearance, he radiated an intensity that made the large room feel suddenly smaller. "I didn't break in," Chloe stammered, holding up the key the rental agency had given her. "I rented this place. I have confirmation emails and everything." The man's expression shifted from stern to confused. He pulled out his phone, tapping the screen a few times before his jaw tightened. "Let me guess. Blue Mountain Rentals." "Yes. How did you know?" He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration that somehow made him look more human. "Because apparently my business partner decided to list my home on rental sites without telling me. I've been in Seattle for the past 3 months, and I came back early specifically because I needed peace and quiet." Making sense of the situation, the awkward silence stretched between them as thunder crashed outside. Chloe felt mortification creeping up her neck. "I am so sorry. I had no idea. I can leave right now and find a hotel." "In this storm?" He gestured toward the windows, where the rain was now coming down in torrents. "The roads down the mountain will be flooding by now. You wouldn't make it halfway to town? Then what do you suggest?" He studied her for a long moment, and Chloe found herself unable to look away from those intense eyes. Finally, he sighed. "I suppose we're both stuck here until morning. I'm Jackson West, by the way. The actual owner of Riverside Manor. Chloe Brennan, the accidental trespasser." Despite the tension, Jackson's lips quirked in what might have been the beginning of a smile. "Well, Chloe Brennan, since we're going to be unexpected roommates for the night, we might as well make the best of it. Have you eaten?" She shook her head. "I was planning to order delivery, but I don't think anywhere delivers this far out. They don't. But I'm a decent cook, and Mrs. Porter keeps the kitchen stocked. Come on." An unexpected evening following Jackson down to the kitchen felt surreal. An hour ago, Chloe thought she would be spending the week alone. Now she was watching a stranger who happened to be devastatingly handsome move around his kitchen with practiced ease, pulling out ingredients for what he promised would be his grandmother's pasta recipe. "So what brings you to the middle of nowhere?" Jackson asked as he set a pot of water to boil. "Most people who rent places like this are either running from something or running toward something." Chloe leaned against the counter, considering how much to share. There was something about the storm, the unexpected situation, and Jackson's direct manner that made her want to be honest. "A little of both, I guess. I'm a photographer, or at least I used to be. I've been in a creative rut for months. Everything I shoot lately feels flat and lifeless. I thought maybe getting away from the city would help." "And the running from part?" She met his gaze. "A relationship that ended badly. The kind where you realize you wasted 2 years on someone who never really saw you." Jackson nodded, something in his expression suggesting he understood more than he was saying. "I know something about that. My ex-fiancée broke things off 6 months ago. Decided that being married to someone who built houses for a living wasn't glamorous enough for her social circle." "You build houses?" "I'm an architect. I design sustainable homes, mostly in rural areas. It's not exactly the high-powered corporate career she had in mind when we met." Finding common ground as Jackson cooked, they fell into an easy conversation that surprised them both. He told her about his latest project, a series of eco-friendly cabins in Montana. She described her early work documenting urban landscapes and how she had lost touch with what had originally drawn her to photography. "You need to find your joy again," Jackson said as he plated the pasta. "That's what Mrs. Porter, my housekeeper, always says. She's been telling me the same thing for months." They ate at the kitchen island rather than the formal dining room. Storm still raging outside, but somehow feeling distant and unimportant. Chloe found herself laughing at Jackson's stories about construction mishaps and demanding clients. And she noticed how his whole face changed when he smiled, the severity melting into something warm and genuine. "This is really good," Chloe said, twirling more pasta onto her fork. "You weren't kidding about your grandmother's recipe. She insisted all her grandchildren learn to cook. Said it was a life skill that transcended gender roles." Jackson refilled her wine glass. "I'm sorry about the mix-up with the rental. My business partner means well, but he sometimes makes decisions without consulting me first. It's not your fault. And honestly, this is turning out better than I expected. If I had been here alone all night in this storm, I probably would have convinced myself the place was haunted." Jackson laughed, the sound rich and genuine. "It's not haunted, but it does have its share of creaks and groans. The house was built in 1887. My great-great-grandfather commissioned it as a summer retreat, sharing stories by firelight after dinner." They moved to the library, where Jackson built a fire while Chloe browsed the bookshelves. The combination of the crackling fire, the rain against the windows, and the leather-bound books created an atmosphere of timeless comfort. "Tell me about your photography," Jackson said, as they settled into chairs facing the fire. "What drew you to it in the first place?" Chloe curled her legs under her, cradling a cup of tea. "My dad gave me my first camera when I was 10. He was a photojournalist, always traveling to document stories that mattered. He died when I was 15, but by then, he had taught me to see the world through a lens. To look for the light, the shadow, the moment that tells a story. I'm sorry about your father. Thank you. Photography became my way of staying connected to him. But lately, I feel like I've lost that connection. Everything I shoot feels like I'm just going through the motions." Jackson was quiet for a moment, staring into the fire. Sometimes we get so focused on what we think we should be creating that we forget why we started creating in the first place. I went through something similar after my engagement ended. Every design I came up with felt forced, like I was trying to prove something instead of building something meaningful. What changed? I stopped designing for other people's approval and started designing for myself. I took on a project nobody else wanted, A tiny house for a retired teacher on a fixed budget? It reminded me why I became an architect, to create spaces where people can truly live, not just exist. Chloe studied Jackson's profile in the firelight, noticing the passion that animated his features as he spoke about his work. There was something magnetic about his intensity, the way he seemed to care deeply about things that mattered. "Maybe that's what I need," she said softly. "To photograph something that matters to me, not what I think will impress clients or fit my portfolio. What would that be?" She thought about it, surprised when the answer came easily. Connection. Real human connection. The moments between people that are genuine and unguarded. Jackson turned to look at her, and something in his gaze made her breath catch. That sounds like a worthy subject. The night deepens, they talked for hours, the conversation flowing effortlessly from topic to topic. Jackson told her about growing up in the manor, about summers spent exploring the woods and winters skating on the frozen river. Chloe shared stories about her travels, the people she had met, the places that had changed her. Somewhere around midnight, the storm began to ease, the thunder growing distant and the rain softening to a gentle patter. Chloe realized she hadn't thought about her ex or her creative struggles for hours. She felt more present and alive than she had in months. "I should probably let you get some sleep," Jackson said finally, though he made no move to get up. "Tomorrow we can sort out the rental situation properly." "Right, of course." Chloe stood, suddenly aware of how much she didn't want the evening to end. "Thank you for dinner, and for not throwing me out into the storm." Jackson rose as well, moving closer. "Thank you for being unexpectedly good company. I came here to be alone, but I'm finding that solitude isn't always what we really need." They stood there for a moment, the firelight casting dancing shadows around them. Chloe felt the pull between them, something electric and undeniable. But the moment passed, and Jackson stepped back with a small smile. "Good night, Chloe Brennan. I hope the house doesn't creak too loudly and keep you awake." Right. Jackson West. "I hope you don't regret letting the accidental trespasser stay." As Chloe made her way to the master bedroom, she found herself already looking forward to morning. The solitude she had been seeking suddenly seemed less appealing than the prospect of another conversation with the mysterious owner of Riverside Manor. She fell asleep to the sound of rain and the memory of whiskey-colored eyes that seemed to see straight through her carefully. Constructed walls, morning light, and new beginnings. Chloe woke to sunlight streaming through the tall windows of the master bedroom. The storm had passed completely, leaving behind a world that sparkled with freshness. She could hear birds singing and the gentle rush of the river below. For the first time in months, she felt genuinely rested, as if the weight she had been carrying had lightened. Somehow during the night, she showered and dressed in jeans and a soft blue sweater, taking more care with her appearance than she had in weeks. She told herself it had nothing to do with Jackson West, but she knew she was lying. There was something about him that had awakened a part of her, she thought, had died with her last relationship. Following the scent of coffee, Chloe found her way to the kitchen where Jackson was already up, standing at the stove making pancakes. He wore flannel pajama pants and a faded college sweatshirt, his hair adorably disheveled from sleep. The casual domesticity of the scene made her heart skip unexpectedly. "Good morning," he said, glancing over his shoulder with a smile that seemed more relaxed than the night before. "I hope you like blueberry pancakes. Mrs. Porter dropped off fresh berries yesterday before I got home. You have a housekeeper who brings you berries?" Chloe accepted the coffee mug he handed her, their fingers brushing briefly. Mrs. Porter is more like family than staff. She worked for my grandparents and refused to retire when they passed. Now she claims she keeps the house running because I would let it fall into disrepair. Which is probably true. Chloe settled onto a stool at the kitchen island. Watching Jackson cook with the same easy confidence he had shown the night before, morning light softened his features. She noticed details she had missed in the firelight, the slight scar above his left eyebrow, the way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, the strength in his hands as he flipped pancakes with practiced ease. Honest conversations, so. Jackson said as he plated the pancakes and joined her at the island. "I called my business partner this morning. He was appropriately apologetic about the rental situation. He's refunding your money and giving you credit toward a future stay." Chloe felt a pang of disappointment. So I need to leave today? Jackson met her eyes, and something unspoken passed between them. Actually, I was thinking, this house has 12 bedrooms. It seems ridiculous for me to kick you out when there's plenty of space. If you still want the solitude you came looking for, you're welcome to stay. We can avoid each other if that's what you prefer. If I don't prefer that, his smile was slow and genuine. Then maybe we could both use some company. The kind that doesn't feel like an obligation. They ate breakfast together, and the conversation picked up where it had left off the night before. Jackson told her about his decision to leave the high-pressure architecture firm in Seattle and return to Riverside. Manor to start his own practice focused on sustainable design. Everyone thought I was crazy, he admitted, pouring more coffee for both of them. Walking away from a 6-figure salary and a partnership track to design houses in rural areas that barely pay the bills. But I was miserable. I spent my days designing luxury condos for wealthy clients who cared more about status than substance. It was killing something inside me. I understand that, Chloe said softly. I've been taking commercial assignments that pay well, but leave me feeling empty. Corporate headshots, product photography, events where everyone wants to look perfect. I haven't shot anything that mattered to me in over a year. Why not? She traced the rim of her coffee mug, considering the question. Fear, I think. Fear that if I try to do meaningful work and fail, I'll have to admit that I'm not as talented as my father was. That maybe I've been coasting on his legacy instead of building my own. Jackson reached across the island and covered her hand with his. The gesture was simple, but grounding. From what you told me last night, your father would want you to take risks. To chase the work that sets your soul on fire, not the work that pays the bills. Exploring together after breakfast, Jackson suggested showing her the estate grounds. They bundled into jackets and stepped out into the crisp autumn morning. The storm had stripped many leaves from the trees, carpeting the ground in brilliant reds and golds. The river ran high and fast from the rain, sparkling in the sunlight. Jackson led her along a winding path through the woods, pointing out landmarks from his childhood. A tree house his grandfather had built, now weathered but still sturdy. A clearing where his grandmother had maintained a garden filled with wildflowers, a rocky outcrop that offered views of the entire valley. This is where I come when I need to think, Jackson said as they stood on the outcrop, the wind tugging at their hair. Something about the perspective helps. When you can see the whole landscape, your problems feel more manageable. Chloe pulled out her camera, a habit so ingrained she barely thought about it anymore. But as she looked through the viewfinder, something felt different. The light was perfect, golden and clear. Jackson stood at the edge of the outcrop, hands in his pockets, looking out over the valley with an expression of peaceful contemplation. Without thinking, she raised the camera and captured the moment. Jackson turned at the sound of the shutter. Did you just take my picture? Sorry, I should have asked. It's just, the light was perfect, and you look so. So what? At peace? Real? Unguarded? She lowered the camera, feeling suddenly vulnerable. Those are the moments I used to love capturing. Before I forgot how, Jackson walked over and gently took the camera from her hands, studying it with interest. This is beautiful equipment. May I? She nodded and he raised the camera, pointing it at her. Now you look how I felt? Like you just remembered something important. The click of the shutter made her smile. I think maybe I did. Sharing vulnerabilities, they spent the afternoon exploring the estate, and Chloe found herself photographing everything. The way light filtered through the trees, the patterns of leaves on the ground, Jackson's hands as he pointed out a hawk circling overhead. Each click of the shutter felt like rediscovering a lost language. They returned to the house as the sun began to set, both windblown and energized. Jackson built a fire in the library while Chloe made tea, and they settled into what was already becoming their routine, facing chairs by the fire. Comfortable silence punctuated by easy conversation. Can I ask you something? Chloe said after a while. Why did you really come back here? You said you needed peace and quiet, but there's more to it than that, isn't there? Jackson was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Finally, he spoke. My engagement ended because my fiancé realized I would never be the person she wanted me to be. She wanted someone ambitious in a conventional way. Someone who would network and climb corporate ladders and care about the right social circles. But that's not me. It never was. She wanted to change you. Yes, and for a while I let her try. I pretended to enjoy the parties and the networking events. I designed buildings I didn't believe in because they impressed the right people. I became someone I didn't recognize. He looked at Chloe, vulnerability clear in his expression. Coming back here was about remembering who I actually am, not who someone else needed me to be. Chloe understood that feeling more than she wanted to admit. My ex wanted me to be more practical. He thought photography was a cute hobby, but not a real career. He kept suggesting I go back to school for something more stable. Marketing, maybe? Or business administration. But you didn't want that. I wanted him to believe in me, to see that photography wasn't just a hobby. It was part of who I am. But he never did. And eventually, I started to wonder if maybe he was right. Maybe I was being impractical and foolish. Jackson leaned forward, his gaze intense. Chloe, I've known you less than 24 hours. But I've seen the way your whole face changes when you talk about photography. The way you see light and composition in everything around you. That's not a hobby. That's a calling. The sincerity in his voice made her throat tight with emotion. Thank you for saying that. Not just saying it. I mean it. The first kiss as darkness fell. They made dinner together, moving around the kitchen with increasing ease. Jackson taught her his grandmother's technique for making the perfect risotto, and Chloe shared stories about cooking disasters from her travels. They laughed over wine and told increasingly ridiculous stories, the comfort between them deepening with each passing hour. After dinner, Jackson suggested a walk by the river. The night was clear and cold, stars brilliant overhead. They followed a path lit by moonlight, their breath forming clouds in the crisp air. The river rushed beside them, its voice filling the silence. They reached a small dock that extended over the water, and Jackson led her to the end where they could see the reflection of stars on the rippling surface. Chloe hugged herself against the cold, and Jackson moved closer, sharing his warmth. I'm glad you accidentally broke into my house, he said softly. She laughed. I'm glad you didn't call the police. Chloe, I need to be honest with you about something. Her heart began to race. What? I haven't felt this comfortable with anyone in years. Maybe ever. There's something about you that makes me want to be completely myself. No pretense, no performance. Just me. She turned to face him, and in the moonlight, his eyes looked almost silver. I feel the same way. It's terrifying and wonderful at the same time. What are we doing here? Jackson asked, though the question seemed directed more at himself than at her. You're supposed to leave in a week. We just met. This doesn't make any logical sense. No, Chloe agreed, her voice barely a whisper. It doesn't. But logic seemed irrelevant as Jackson cupped her face in his hands, his touch gentle and questioning. She answered by rising on her toes, closing the distance between them. Their first kiss was soft and searching. A tentative exploration that quickly deepened into something more urgent. Chloe wrapped her arms around his neck, and Jackson pulled her closer, one hand tangling in her hair. The kiss tasted like wine and possibility, like the beginning of something that could change everything. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Jackson rested his forehead against hers. This is unexpected, he murmured. Everything about this is unexpected, Chloe replied. But I don't want to stop. Neither do I. They kissed again, slower this time, savoring the moment. The river rushed past, the stars wheeled overhead, and Chloe felt something inside her chest expand and bloom. This wasn't what she had come here looking for, but maybe it was what she needed to find. Days of discovery. The next few days passed in a haze of happiness that Chloe had never experienced before. She and Jackson fell into an easy rhythm, spending mornings working on their respective projects. She sorted through her photographs and began planning a new series focused on connection and authentic moments. He worked on designs for his Montana cabins, occasionally asking her opinion on aesthetic choices. Afternoons they spent exploring the estate, the surrounding countryside. Jackson showed her hidden waterfalls and secret meadows, places he had discovered as a boy. Chloe photographed everything. But her favorite subjects were the candid shots of Jackson, laughing as he skipped stones across the river, concentrated as he explained the architecture of an old stone bridge, relaxed as he read in the library with afternoon light streaming across his face. Evenings were for cooking together, for long conversations by the fire, for kisses that grew increasingly familiar and yet somehow more thrilling each time. They talked about everything, their childhoods, their dreams, their fears, their failures. Chloe shared stories about her father that she had never told anyone, and Jackson opened up about the pressure he had felt to live up to his family's legacy. "My grandfather was a renowned architect," Jackson explained one evening as they cuddled on the couch in the library. "Everyone expected me to follow in his footsteps, to design important buildings that would win awards and make the family proud. But I never wanted that kind of fame. I wanted to create homes where people could live beautiful, sustainable lives." "It's just as important," Chloe said, tracing patterns on his chest. "More important? Maybe. Not everyone needs a monument, but everyone needs a home." Jackson kissed the top of her head. "You always know exactly what to say."
Ah!
But beneath the happiness, Chloe felt a growing anxiety. Her week was almost up. She was supposed to return to Boston, to her cramped apartment and her unfulfilling assignments and her life that suddenly felt impossibly small compared to what she had found here, facing reality on the 6th morning. Chloe woke before dawn, unable to sleep. She slipped out of Jackson's arms and went to stand by the window, watching the sky lighten over the mountains. In 2 days, she would have to leave. The thought felt like a physical ache. She heard Jackson stir behind her, felt his arms wrap around her waist as he joined her at the window. "You're thinking about leaving," he said quietly. "How did you know?" "Because I've been thinking about it too. Trying to figure out how to ask you to stay without sounding desperate or crazy." Chloe turned in his arms to face him. "I have a life in Boston. An apartment, clients, commitments. I know. I don't want to go back to that life. Not anymore. Being here with you has shown me what I've been missing. Connection, purpose, joy." Jackson cupped her face in his hands. "Then don't go back. Or go back long enough to settle things and then come back here." "To me, Jackson, we've known each other less than a week." "I know. It's insane. But I also know that I've never felt about anyone the way I feel about you. And I don't want to lose this because we're being practical or cautious." Chloe felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm scared. What if this is just a beautiful dream that can't survive reality? What if it's not? What if this is real and lasting and everything we've both been looking for?" He kissed her softly. "I'm not asking you to have all the answers right now. I'm just asking you not to walk away without giving us a real chance." "I need to think," Chloe said, though her heart already knew what it wanted. "I need a little time to figure things out. Take all the time you need. I'll be here." A day of reflection, Chloe spent the day alone, driving to the nearby town and walking through streets she didn't know, trying to clear her head. She called her best friend Rebecca, who had been her sounding board through every major decision in her life. "Let me get this straight," Rebecca said after Chloe explained the situation. "You went to Virginia to be alone, accidentally ended up in the home of a gorgeous architect, fell head over heels in a week, and now you're trying to decide whether to append your entire life for a man you just met. When you put it that way, it sounds completely insane." It does sound insane. It also sounds like the most alive you've been in years. Chloe, I've known you since college. I've never heard you talk about anyone the way you talk about Jackson. Not even David. And you dated him for 2 years. But what if I'm just caught up in the romance of it all? What if the real world intrudes and everything falls apart? Rebecca was quiet for a moment. "Remember what your dad used to say? That the best photographs capture moments of complete truth, when someone forgets to be anything but themselves. Maybe that's what you found with Jackson. A space where you can both be completely real."
After hanging up, Chloe walked to a small park and sat on a bench, watching children play while their parents chatted nearby. She thought about her life in Boston, about the small apartment she barely spent time in, about the assignments that paid the bills but left her feeling hollow. She thought about her father, about what he would say if he were here. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through the photographs she had taken over the past week. They were the best work she had done in years, full of light and life and genuine emotion. Every picture told a story of connection, of discovery, of falling in love. Her father had always told her to follow the light. Maybe that's exactly what she was doing. The surprise. Chloe returned to Riverside Manor as the sun was setting, her mind made up but her nerves jangling with anticipation. She found the house dark except for lights glowing from the back terrace. Curious, she made her way through the house and out the French doors. The terrace had been transformed. String lights hung overhead, creating a canopy of stars. Candles flickered on every surface. A table was set for two with Jackson's grandmother's china and silver. And in the center of it all stood Jackson, wearing a suit and looking nervous and hopeful and so handsome it made her chest ache. "What is all this?" Chloe asked, her voice catching. "I know you needed time to think, and I respect that. But I also couldn't let you leave without showing you what our life together could look like. This is what I want, Chloe. Evenings like this. Mornings waking up together. Days working side by side on projects we care about. I want all of it, with you." He walked over and took her hands. "I'm not asking you to give up your career or your independence. I'm asking you to build a life with me. You could set up a studio here. Take on projects that matter to you. Travel when you need to. I'll support whatever you want to do, as long as you come home to me." Chloe felt tears streaming down her face. "Jackson, I went into town today trying to convince myself to be sensible. To go back to Boston and see if whatever this is could survive distance and reality. But the truth is, I don't want to be sensible. I want to be brave enough to choose happiness. Is that a yes?" "It's a yes to trying. To seeing where this goes. To giving us a real chance." She smiled through her tears. "I need to go back to Boston to wrap things up. Give notice on my apartment, finish my current commitments. But then I want to come back here. To you. To this life we could build together." Jackson pulled her into his arms, kissing her with joy and relief and promise. "That's all I needed to hear. We'll figure out the rest together." They ate dinner on the terrace, talking about logistics and possibilities and dreams. Jackson offered to help her move, to drive to Boston with her so she wouldn't have to face it alone. They discussed converting one of the manor's unused rooms into a photography studio with perfect north light. They planned trips they could take together, combining his architecture projects with her photography. 6 months later. The spring sun warmed the terrace where Chloe sat editing photographs on her laptop. The studio Jackson had built for her was everything she had dreamed of, with soaring ceilings, walls of windows, and space for both her digital work and a traditional darkroom. In the 6 months since she had moved to Riverside Manor, she had launched a new photography series exploring rural communities and sustainable living that had already been picked up by a major magazine. She heard Jackson's truck pull up the drive and smiled, saving her work and standing to stretch. He appeared on the terrace moments later, pulling her into a kiss that still made her heart race even after all these months. "How was the site visit?" she asked. "Perfect. The Montana cabins are almost finished, and the clients love them. They want to hire me for another project in Wyoming." He grinned. "And I told them my photographer partner might be interested in documenting the project." "Partner, huh? Is that what I am?" "Among other things." Jackson reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Chloe's breath caught. "Jackson, what is this?" "Open it." Inside was a ring unlike any she had ever seen, a simple band of gold with a single perfect diamond, elegant and timeless. But what made her gasp was the engraving inside, "Follow the light." "It was your father's philosophy," Jackson said softly, taking the ring from the box. And it led you to me. Chloe Brennan, I know we haven't been together long by conventional standards. But I also know that I want to spend the rest of my life waking up next to you, creating beautiful things together, building a home filled with love and purpose and joy. Will you marry me? Chloe didn't hesitate. Yes. 1,000 times yes.